Welcome to the Daily Recap. Here's something that just happened. A federal trade court just told Trump his 10% global tariffs are illegal. And instead of backing down, Trump immediately issued a brand new ultimatum to Europe threatening tariffs of much higher levels. So the question is, what does this actually mean for your wallet? Stick around. Okay, so on Thursday, the U.S. Court of International Trade handed down a ruling that caught basically everyone off guard. The court said that Trump's sweeping 10% global tariff on imports cannot be justified under Section 203 of the Trade Act of 1974. That's the specific law Trump was leaning on to impose these across-the-board tariffs. For context, Trump announced this 10% global tariff back in April of this year. The idea was simple in theory. Slap a 10% tax on basically everything coming into the country from everywhere. No exceptions, no negotiations, just a blanket tax on all imports. It was the broadest tariff action he'd attempted since taking office. But the court found that this approach violated the legal framework he was supposed to be working within. The Trade Act of 1974 gives presidents power to impose tariffs, but not unlimited power. The court essentially said you can't just wake up one day and decide to tax everything at the same rate without proper justification. Here's the critical part, though. Within hours of this court ruling, Trump didn't sit back and regroup. Instead, he issued a new deadline to the European Union. He's giving them until March 1st to implement specific trade deal terms. If they don't, he's threatening tariffs at levels he described as much higher levels. So we're talking potentially 20, 25, maybe 30% or more on European goods. That's not hypothetical anymore. That's a real threat with a real date attached. The EU basically has less than 3 months to negotiate and implement whatever Trump is asking for, or face significantly heavier tariffs than even the original 10%. This matters because tariffs aren't some abstract economic concept that only affects Wall Street. Tariffs are taxes that get passed directly to you. Think about your phone. Made in China, likely assembled in Vietnam, parts from Japan and South Korea. When tariffs hit that supply chain, the companies don't just absorb the cost, they pass it along. Your next phone costs more. Same with clothes. Same with cars. Same with groceries. Every single consumer product you buy has a global supply chain, and tariffs tax that entire chain. Right now, inflation is still a hot-button issue for Americans. We've come down from the crazy levels we saw in 2022 and 2023. But prices are still elevated. Wages have mostly caught up, but people are exhausted from years of higher costs. New tariffs would absolutely reignite inflation. Economists across the board are warning about this. Let's say the EU doesn't reach a deal by March 1st, and Trump follows through with those much higher tariffs. European goods like German cars, Italian wine, French cheese, they all get way more expensive overnight. American companies that rely on European parts? Their costs go up too. It's not just about trade between countries. It's about the cost of living for ordinary Americans. There's also the business uncertainty aspect. If companies don't know what tariff rate will be in place next month, next quarter, next year, they can't plan. They can't invest. They can't hire with confidence. Uncertainty itself is bad for the economy. It freezes decision-making. And then there's the legal angle. If Trump loses in court on the global tariffs, but then tries to implement even higher targeted tariffs, there will be more lawsuits. We could see months or years of legal battles while tariffs and counter-tariffs ripple through the economy. For regular people, the practical impact is straightforward. Stuff you buy costs more. Jobs might become less stable if companies freeze hiring due to uncertainty. Interest rates could rise again if inflation picks back up. Your 401k could take a hit if markets react badly to trade war fears. To understand why we're here, You need to know what Trump's been trying to do with tariffs since he took office. Trump has always believed that America gets a raw deal in trade. He thinks the U.S. has massive trade deficits because other countries are cheating or taking advantage of us. Trade deficits are real, but the causes are complicated. It's not always because the other guy is cheating. Sometimes it's just because Americans like buying stuff from other countries. Since 2025, Trump started aggressively using Section 203 of the Trade Act of 1974 to justify tariffs. This law was written 50 years ago to allow presidents to protect American industries during national emergencies. It's supposed to be a narrow tool, but Trump has been stretching it further and further, arguing that things like trade deficits and the threat of losing manufacturing capability count as national emergencies. He's done specific tariffs on China. He's done tariffs on steel and aluminum. But the 10% global tariff was the most aggressive move yet. It wasn't targeting one country or one industry. It was saying every single import, no matter what, gets taxed 10%. The court said no, that's too broad. That's not what the law allows. Meanwhile, Trump's been having ongoing trade negotiations with the EU. The EU definitely wants to avoid a tariff war. They've been trying to work out deals on everything from agricultural products to tech regulations to defense spending. But Trump's negotiating style is confrontational. He sets deadlines. He threatens tariffs. He uses maximum pressure tactics. That's what March 1st is about. That's his maximum pressure tactic. Either the EU capitulates on whatever he's demanding, or tariffs go to much higher levels. So what actually happens now? First, Trump could appeal the court's ruling. That takes time, though. We could be looking at months of legal battles. Second, and more likely, he'll use targeted tariffs instead of blanket tariffs. Instead of 10% on everything, he'll say 25% on autos, 15% on chemicals, 20% on agricultural products. That's actually harder to challenge in court because it looks more targeted and justified. Third, the EU will try to negotiate like crazy between now and March 1st. They might offer concessions on defense spending, or agricultural imports, or something else Trump wants. The EU is not in a strong negotiating position if Trump is willing to follow through on the threats. Most likely outcome? Some kind of negotiated deal gets announced right before the March 1st deadline. Trump declares victory. The EU avoids the worst tariffs, but tariffs still end up being higher than before. Prices still go up a little bit. It's not a clean resolution. It's more of a messy compromise that nobody's totally happy with. What we don't know is whether other countries start retaliating. China will probably fire back with their own tariffs. That's how trade wars escalate. Every action creates a counteraction, and suddenly you have a real trade war on your hands. So here's your recap. Court ruled Trump's 10% global tariffs are illegal. Trump responded by threatening the EU with even higher tariffs by March 1st. This affects prices you pay and the stability of the economy. It's not over. It's just beginning. If you found this breakdown helpful, like the video, subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. I'm publishing updates on this story as it develops. Thanks for watching the Daily Recap.